Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a pretty wild idea. A new perspective that says our whole understanding of the universe, the entire thing, might be built on a fundamental mistake. We're going to look at a theory that completely reframes reality itself. Okay, let's get into it.
So just think about this for a second. What if the most confusing, the most stubborn puzzles in cosmology, the ones that have kept physicists up at night for decades, what if they aren't real problems with the universe at all? What if they're just ghosts in our own conceptual machine? Look, modern physics has been incredibly successful, right? But it's also facing a kind of crisis. There are at least three massive problems, sometimes called hierarchy problems, where our best theories just totally break down when we compare them to what we actually see. And the source material we're looking at today says these aren't just little bugs we can patch, they're signs of a deep, deep flaw in our conceptual software.
And listen, we're not talking about small mistakes here. The predictions our theories make for the Higgs mass, for the strength of gravity, for the energy of empty space, they are off by an astronomical amount. It's like you design a skyscraper, but your math for its weight is off by more than the weight of the entire planet. Something is just fundamentally deeply wrong.
So how do we possibly fix that? Well, the perspective we're exploring today says we need a complete reboot. Instead of trying to write new code for our broken software, it says we've completely misunderstood the hardware of reality itself.
In this slide right here, this is the core of the whole idea. On the left, you've got the standard view, right? A universe of different particles and fields interacting through four fundamental forces. But on the right, that's the new idea. A universe that isn't a bunch of things interacting, but is instead a single integrated machine. In this view, there aren't any separate forces. There's just the geometry of one single fabric, changing.
They call this the complete machinery perspective. And the absolutely crucial point is that things we see as totally separate, like Einstein's general relativity, which describes gravity, and quantum mechanics for all the tiny stuff. Well, they're not different things. They are just two different ways of looking at the exact same unified machine doing its thing.
Okay, so that all sounds pretty mind-bending, but does this new perspective actually solve anything? Let's take a look at that first big puzzle and see how this works. The problem with the Higgs boson's mass.
So the old way of thinking says the Higgs field acts like some kind of cosmic goo that other particles move through, and that's what gives them mass. But that creates this huge fine-tuning problem of why the Higgs itself is so light. In the machinery view, though, mass isn't something that's given, it's just an built-in property of a particle's shape, kind of like the size of a gear in a watch. The Higgs particle just has the mass it needs to be the right-sized gear in the machine. And just like that, the problem isn't really solved, it just vanishes. It was never a problem to begin with.
All right, next up, what about that gigantic gap between how incredibly weak gravity is and how ridiculously strong the quantum forces are? How can a single fabric explain such a massive difference?
This quote really just cuts right to the heart of it. This theory argues that our whole concept of force is the mistake. There are no forces pushing or pulling anything. There is only one thing happening, a fabric changing its shape. That's it.
So why do we see gravity as weak and quantum forces as strong? Well, according to this, it's an illusion. It's totally created by our perspective. The strength of an interaction is just a side effect of the scale we're using to watch the fabric change its shape. It's like looking at a whole mountain from miles away versus putting a single grain of sand from that mountain under a microscope. They're part of the same thing, but your perspective creates this huge perceived difference in their impact.
And that brings us to the biggest ghost in the machine of them all, dark energy. We invented this idea to explain why the expansion of the universe seems to be speeding up. This machinery perspective, it claims dark energy doesn't even exist. The argument here is that we basically made up dark energy to solve a problem that might not even be there. We see light from faraway galaxies getting stretched out, that's called redshift, and for a long time we've just assumed that the only thing that could cause that is space itself expanding. This theory says that's a huge assumption, a mistake we made because we don't understand the full mechanics of the cosmic fabric.
So this slide lays out a few different mechanical explanations for that redshift we see. What if the speed of light wasn't always constant? What if it was actually slower in the early universe? Or what if the little packets of light themselves, photons, could kind of fluctuate and change their frequency as they travel for billions of years? Or, here's a wild one, what if our whole idea of distance as a fixed background is wrong, and distances are more fluid? Any one of these, happening within a single mechanical fabric, could create the exact same effect we blame on dark energy, no mysterious force needed.
So what we're left with here is a really profound shift in thinking.
It's a move away from seeing the universe as a place run by mysterious, separate forces, and towards seeing it as one single, unified machine that just works based on the rules of geometry.
And that really leads us to one last, really provocative thought. If this perspective is right, then something as basic to physics as force is just an illusion, a story we tell ourselves because of our limited point of view. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other fundamental ideas about our reality are just artifacts of the way we look at it? What other ghosts are hiding in the machine?